Hello, Tony, Samara.
Hello,
Good to
it's nice
have
to see
you.
you.
Same here. Good to see you. Last time we saw each other in London. This time it's via webcam. But thank you for accepting to talk about the changes that are happening right now on the planet. Can you tell us about that and how we can prepare for it? But first, what is currently happening?
Well, I think everyone who's alive today feels and sees and is aware that there is so much happening that that's a difficult question to answer. There is so much. I believe beyond the political and the social changes that are obvious to everyone, there are some undercurrents of subtleties that are going on in the world that most of us are aware of, but perhaps don't focus so much on, that are really very important for transformation, spiritual transformation, as well as emotional transformation today, and for the future, that we really need to take note of. And some of those changes aren't as negative as we think they are, from the reactions that are happening around when we watch the news or when we listen to people's stories. Perhaps we think that those changes are negative, but I actually see that there is a lot of light coming into the world, and that is pushing what is at the core of humanity outwards. So whether that be, old programs that haven't really been communicated in a clear way, or new ways of doing things that we're perhaps holding back a little bit, um, because we don't know how to do things in such a new way. The light is pushing things much quicker than ever before, and that has the pictures that we see on the news and in our minds and in our feelings, that things are different. And that's what I feel, and many people who work with me say they feel the same, and that there is a major shift. And I see it as positive, but we have to embrace it more. We have to open up to it more. And that is so new that some of us just don't know how to do that. And for me, this is a very crucial point in humanity's consciousness and work.
Is it some people talk about going from third dimension to fifth dimension? Is that what you're referring to? And can you tell us more what that is?
I'm not so philosophical in that way, but I think that is a way to describe it, that we're moving from one context, one dimension of reality to another. And, when we're used to doing things in a certain way, when we have habits, it's very difficult to let go of the dimension that we're used to, of the reality that we're used to, and move on to something new. But it's essential. It's like anything, sometimes we really have to change whether we like it or not. Um, and I believe there is a shift in dimension, and that is the subtlety, you know. That is what we're not so aware of. Sometimes we're aware of the symptoms rather than the actual core of the change. And the core of the change is that we're moving to a higher dimension. That means the lower aspects of our thinking and emotions and reactions and programs are not as valid as they were before. And I see actually politicians even noticing that, maybe without realizing that they're noticing that this dimension is opening up. For example, I was reading, and I never read the news, that Obama is really trying to reach out in a different way to the world. And I'm not, pro-Obama or against Obama, but I find it refreshing that the politicians are opening to a new way of communicating to each other, rather than the old of, we are who we are and we just don't understand you, and we won't move to that point of understanding. People are trying more to understand each other. Communication in this dimension, I believe, to be important outside and inside. Inside meaning to ourselves, to listen more deeply to our emotions and really what is happening in our mind, and be intelligent about communicating that to ourselves and to the people we love around us.
So we're less separated, but we're opening up. How opening our heart? How does that translate? Because we're confronted right now, right? So this stress, this panic happening is supposed to happen. So we get to a point of a new communication.
Exactly. I mean, the stress is real, And as human beings, if you're a human being, if things change dramatically, if things aren't so easy, then, we get stressed. And sometimes our communication is irrelevant. And it is not to say that, we need to feel guilty if we do something like get so stressed that we explode, or do something very human, just react in a way that is not so beneficial to ourselves or other people. It is to realize that that is an old habit, and acknowledge that that old habit was a way of communication, and then ask our hearts and the new space we're emerging into to help us to find a new way of communication. So it is not about being perfect now, but learning the steps to find this new way in all aspects of our lives, whether it be external or internal. And I think that takes time and needs support. Needs support in the sense other people who are conscious and are on the path to opening up to this new communication can help one another to reinforce that it's okay to communicate in this more intimate, more beautiful way to each other, even though it may not be so easy. This encourages the emotions and the mind to step out of the old and into the new, as well as to support ourselves in many other ways, which is what I'm doing with people through various techniques of meditation, as well as diet and herbal medicine and detoxification, to allow the body, which is very important, to open up in the same way, because sometimes the physical body and the cells and the memories inside of the cells hold on a little bit longer than they should, and don't move as quickly as what is happening around us. Our emotions.
So they resist, there is tension, and the energy, or whatever you call it, is not moving throughout fully.
Exactly.
Or not grounded also.
Exactly. We may be so surrounded by so many changes that we just don't know where to put our feet, and we don't know, how to ground ourselves in feeling comfortable with that. And this is where physical work, meaning meditations, because some of my meditations are not just sitting down and breathing, which is useful, but actually physical movements allow for the physical body to feel at peace with this rapid change that I believe will increase in the next few months. Now we are entering the beginning part of it.
So before we get into a bit more detail on what we can do physically to prepare our body, tell us, when we receive this email or we receive this phone call that is very challenging because there's some people are deeply living in fears, it bothers us and we want to react immediately in the old way. Before we send that email, before we talk back, what's happening in there in that instant, in that moment, that can shift everything?
Okay, that's a very good way of putting it. For example, if we get a call from our boss who says, "Look, I have some bad news for you. I'm sorry, the economy is not really so good," and you sort of feel that this is leading to a space which is not really what you want to hear at that moment, and they say, "Sorry, we have to let you go." Our instant reaction would be of fear. My gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this new situation? So the picture that we bring up is not the reality, but it's the idea of the reality. And that is what then creates a reaction. And our body believes that to be reality. So our body reacts as if what we're thinking, the old program, the fear, is what is going to happen. But we don't know, because we're living in that moment where, everything is possible. And many new things are possible. So from that moment, if we open ourselves to, okay, maybe this is not such a bad thing after all, maybe this is good news, then our body relaxes and allows for something else to happen. And this is what is very difficult for most people to do, to catch the movement in that moment when it's coming through. Often we will realize this perhaps 3 months later when something else beautiful happens and we think, okay, well, that wasn't such a bad experience, but that's 3 months of stress. We don't have time to do that anymore. We have to react, I believe, in the future much more quickly, much more in the moment. And that requires for us to take a deep breath and just to say, okay, this reaction that is coming up, is that really important? Or is it just my old program that is wanting me to go into doing things as I do in everyday life? And this is where grounding is important, because we will tend to, in that moment, just disappear into the emotions of the past. And if we are grounded, we have our feet somewhere else. So even though we may experience the emotions of the past, our feet are so grounded that we don't have to walk down that path. We can actually say, okay, my feet are taking me, somewhere else. I can feel that it's stressful, but I can feel that I have a choice in that moment not to react to that stress.
And not be tensing up and blocking the energy, but it's in that moment where physically we have to take a kind of a quantum leap.
Exactly.
So we just, and so how do we, so we breathe. What do you recommend physically to do to prepare ourselves? Because things are accelerating, as you say, and we need to act fast, and we need to, I don't like so much this word, but it's embracing this change as rapidly as possible to come out of it and get into this new space of communication.
It's important because I believe if we resist the natural flow of joy and happiness that we can experience. So actually, when you say need, in some way, we need to be joyful and happy. It's not so interesting anymore to go into sadness and into stress and into unhappiness and prolong that experience. We are naturally joyful as human beings. We're born that way. And actually, hopefully, we remember to stay that way. And to do that is much easier than we think if we catch things that pull us away from that joy in the moment. So what we need to do, for example, if we feel stressed, just as a practical solution to that moment when your boss is calling you or some other person is calling you and you feel stressed and wanting to react in that old fearful way or jealous way or angry way, then we can just say, okay, I have to just take a deep breath now, just wait a moment, and physically move the body, move the shoulders, move the diaphragm, open the diaphragms, stretch the body, open the shoulders, and allow the mind to sink into the energy of the physical body so that it's not floating into the idea that this is really bad, so that it comes back into the body. And this is where joy is. Ecstasy lives very much in the energy that holds the body together. And once we ground our experience into that space, then we realize we have a choice. And that is what I believe to be so fantastic about being a human being, that actually we are born into a planet that is the planet where you have a choice, and even if we don't think that is possible, like I'm being fired from my work and I have no choice but to, worry about my mortgage. We have a choice. If we go back to the joy and the relaxation in the body. So to do that, we can't think it. We have to use the body to remind itself that there is a body. And that is done through movements and through stretching and through allowing the breath to really flow through. And there are certain exercises that I teach in seminars that are very useful, that work with 3 glands that are very connected to the physical body. That's the pituitary gland, which is the gland of light in the body, the thyroid, which is the gland of communication, and the thymus, which is the gland of physical strength. So
where are those 3 in our body?
Yeah, the 3. The pituitary is in the brain, in the middle of the brain. The thyroid is right here, and the thymus, right here meaning the throat area, and the thymus is just on the chest, where the rib cage meets over the heart area, over the physical heart area. And those three glands are the most sensitive glands to changes. So, for example, the pituitary gland, if there is stress, or if there is depression, or sadness, or grief, or anger, tends to shrink in the brain. And this is actually physically demonstrated by scientists and biologists to happen. And when that shrinks, when that gland shrinks, it doesn't allow for the physical light structure to open up so much. There is more what I call darkness in the body, which is like confusion, a sense of not knowing what to do, a sense of being lost. And the pituitary gland plays a very important role to bring this joy and freedom into the body experience. And there are very interesting movements that were done by Sufis and by Buddhist mystics and by Christian mystics a long time ago that, you know, are so easy to practice. And of course, it may not seem to be the solution in the moment of stress, but when we practice for a few days, we find that it does make a big, big difference. And if you don't mind, I can show you one of the movements because,
Sure.
you know, people like to know what to do.
Yeah.
So one of the movements, and I'll explain it as I'm doing, for the pituitary gland is closing your eyes and focusing on the third eye. So actually, the eyes get focused to the point here. And when you do this, you simply focus on the third eye and breathe out so that the effort is on the out breath, and you move from side to side very gently as if you are sitting on a boat on a beautiful, calm day, and the sea is just gently rocking you from side to side. And this is wonderful to do for a few moments or even 5 minutes. And when you do this, what is happening is that you're focusing on the third eye, and the third eye works with the pituitary gland. And then you receive information which is all around, and this is what I call universal wisdom, to come in to help you during that moment when you feel you're blocked or there is no other solution. So actually the universe, which is always supporting us, then has a channel to come through to support us in a more direct, real way, you know, to answer that situation.
Just to make it clear, you focus on so you're breathing in and out through your mouth, or you're seeing breathing in and out through your third eye?
You're breathing in through your mouth or your nose.
Yeah.
And when you do that, your intention and
You focus your attention here.
Exactly, is the third eye. And that brings the energy to the third eye rather than the mind thoughts that are happening all around, the stress or the fear. So you really then focus the energy inside. And this is a very old technique that, you know, even in martial arts was done, so in a practical way, you're ready, no matter what was happening around, to be totally focused in your energy. And it works because it works not just with relaxing the body, but it works with the glands, which are very essential, I believe, in adapting the whole body to this new transformation that is happening around us, to the quickening that is happening around us. And this is just one gland.
Because there's a lot of exercises with it seems like the universe, but some teachers are more and more focusing now with the earth and really trying to combine both energy to be even more so aligned and found the grounding of the earth and the celeste, you know, of the.
Yes.
So do you encourage that also, or?
Well, for me, personally, the energy is everywhere. So I don't differentiate between earth and the universe energy, because, you know, that is a mental concept as I see it, because energy is life energy, and life energy exists in a tree and exists in the universe, and it exists everywhere. And when we touch that, we are touching energies everywhere. So for me, it's more about the awareness of how to touch that energy, rather than saying, this is the energy of the earth, or this is the energy of the universe. Of course, if you look at it, there is a slight difference. But for me, more important is humanity at this moment. How can humanity as individuals and as a community open up much more than ever before? And that is an internal mechanism which we are not only responsible for, but we have the wonderful freedom to put into practice, which is a joy, because it means that we can do things. We're not just puppets and we sit there and, whatever happens to us, we feel that we're, pushed from one side to another and we have no option to do anything. We do. And actually, when we realize we do, those options open up even more, and reality shows us more things than we ever thought were possible in that moment when we thought things were impossible.
So what is that word? What is that? I don't want to use premise, but what is this new world opening up? How are things? How are things for you practicing this?
For me, the first thing is, the practical thing is that there is a lot more solar energy coming through, solar flares, light in the physical sense coming through from the universe. So this means that the whole physical structure of Earth is under a little bit of stress because it's adapting to this new cosmic rays, whatever you call it. Scientists call it one thing, people who are more alternative call it something else, but the influx of newness is coming and hitting the physical Earth and asking it to change. So we have physical problems, because the Earth is like a human being. It takes time to change and needs all aspects of life to be harmonious in that change, meaning human beings, plants, animals, mountains, water, the ice, the North Pole and the South Pole, everything to be harmonious. But for the moment, things are more dramatic than they have been. So, the North Pole is melting quicker than ever before. The climate seems to be really different. There are floods everywhere. And some people take that as like a catastrophe and the end of the world and a negative sign. I see it as positive. I see it as the Earth really wanting to renew itself, to open up to something that it hasn't done previously for long time. And it's opening up now, and we can assist that by allowing that physical energy to more embrace the Earth. That means us, because we are part of the Earth. So that means we embrace that physical energy individually and as a humanity in a way that we haven't done before. Physically, this means that, instead of worrying about the flu epidemic that everyone is speaking about and, fearing that it's going to be the next plague and it's going to wipe everyone that's in it, in the plague's way out of existence, to see it as, I see it, as a wonderful new thing, as a preparation for the next change that is going to happen. So, to prepare the physical body so that it's not susceptible to disease. One of the ways is what I was saying, the thymus gland. And we can do many exercises to allow the body to embrace that new physical, whatever the doctors say, the new mutating virus, the body can adapt to that and actually work with it rather than we try to wipe it away or push it aside, because that is an old way of thinking. Trying to stop what is happening from happening in the physical body is not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the way doctors speak about now. So taking a vaccine is not going to support the immune system in the way that doctors believe it will today. So I think we have to do much more.
So now we're becoming shamans, or we're actually relearning how to heal ourselves
and to how to stay healthy.
And to stay healthy.
And that's what shamans do. That's the secret of shamanism. It's not just dealing with the situation afterwards, but making sure everything is harmonious so that whatever you're dealing with is easier. Shamans don't like a lot of work. They like it easy, but they do a lot of work. So rather than wait till the body is so depleted of energy, they do things that seem strange or seem not to relate to what is going on, and that is to prepare the physical body for the changes. So some of the movements, some of the chanting, some of the exercises are done specifically to support the physical body, because then the shamans understand that there will be a virus out there that will deplete the body. But if your body is prepared, the virus will still affect you. You will still get something, but in a much milder way, and in a way that the body will know how to deal with. Because as we know, getting a cold once a year is actually quite useful, because, in some way it teaches your body how to prepare for something that's slightly stronger. So, I see the physical preparation as essential. And there are many, many things that one can do to prepare. The movement, and the movement, can I show you the movement? Because I believe it's
show
important.
us, yeah.
It's difficult, but it's like anything. Sometimes we really have to change whether we like it or not. And I believe there is a shift in dimension, and that is the subtlety. That is what we're not so aware of. Sometimes we're aware of the symptoms rather than the actual core of the change. And the core of the change is that we're moving to a higher dimension. That means the lower aspects of our thinking and emotions and reactions and programs are not as valid as they were before. And I see actually politicians even noticing that, maybe without realizing that they're noticing that this dimension is opening up. For example, I was reading, and I never read the news, that Obama is really trying to reach out that haven't really been communicated in a clear way, or new ways of doing things that we're perhaps holding back a little bit because we don't know how to do things in such a new way. The light is pushing things much quicker than ever before, and that has the pictures that we see on the news and in our minds and in our feelings, that things are different. And that's what I feel, and many people who work with me say they feel the same, and that there is a major shift. And I see it as positive, but we have to embrace it more. We have to open up to it more. And that is so new that some of us just don't know.
Hello, Tony, Samara.
Hello.
Good to
it's nice to see you.
Same here. Good to see you. Last time we saw each other in London. This time it's via webcam, but thank you for accepting to talk about the physical, the changes that are happening right now on the planet. Can you tell us about that and how we can prepare for it? But first, what is currently happening?
Well, I think everyone who's alive today feels and sees and is aware that there is so much happening. That's a difficult question to answer. There is so much. I believe beyond the political and the social changes that are obvious to everyone, there are some undercurrents of subtleties that are going on in the world that most of us are aware of, but perhaps don't focus so much on, that are really very important for transformation, spiritual transformation, as well as emotional transformation today, and for the future, that we really need to take note of. And some of those changes aren't as negative as we think they are, from the reactions that are happening around when we watch the news or when we listen to people's stories. Perhaps we think that those changes are negative, but I actually see that there is a lot of light coming into the world, and that is pushing what is at the core of humanity outwards. So whether that be, old programs know how to do that. And for me, this is a very crucial point in humanity's consciousness and work.
Mm-hmm. Is it some people talk about going from third dimension to fifth dimension? Is that what you're referring to? And can you tell us more what that is?
I'm not so philosophical in that way, but I think that is a way to describe it, that we're moving from one context, one dimension of reality to another. And, when we're used to doing things in a certain way, when we have habits, it's very difficult to let go of the dimension that we're used to. of the reality that we're used to and move on to something new. But it's essential.